Hey guys, tonight we're hopping aboard a train, but not the kind with snacks, reclining seats, or a final destination you'd want to write home about. You're not told where you're going. The windows are covered. There's a foul stench in the air, wood, sweat, urine. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder with strangers who might have stolen bread, or insulted Stalin. Doesn't really matter. You're all equal now. Equal in your cuffs. Equal in your fear. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're on a cattle car bound for a labor camp in the middle of the Soviet nowhere. No one tells you how long the ride will be. Could be 3 days. Could be 3 weeks. The guards are stingy with water. There's a rusty pail in the corner for when nature calls. And yes, everyone can see you. It's humiliating, but that emotion fades pretty quickly. Survival demands detachment. When the train lurches to a stop, there's no warm welcome. Dogs bark. Searchlights sweep across the snowy clearing. You're yanked from the car into a blizzard of noise, guards shouting in Russian, boots crunching ice, and the occasional thud of a rifle but nudging someone to move faster. Your legs are stiff. Your ankles are chained. Welcome to your new reality. You squint through the cold at a set of wooden gates. Overhead, there's a crooked sign, Corrective Labor Camp number 112. Very official. Very vague. And very much your new home. A clipboard-wielding officer ticks your name, well, number, off a list. You don't speak unless spoken to. One wrong word and you might be sent to the punishment pit before you've even unpacked. The air stings your lungs, dry and razor-sharp. Your breath fogs like a ghost, and one part of your mind, still clinging to modern comfort, half expects a stewardess to offer you tea. No such luck. A prisoner, maybe an older one, gaunt and hollow-eyed, leans toward you as you're herded toward the gate. First time, he murmurs. You nod. Don't try to make friends, he says. Don't talk politics. Don't eat too fast. Good advice, probably. Hard to tell, given the wild look in his eyes. Inside the perimeter fence, it's all snow, timber, and wire. The barracks look like they've been patched together by blind carpenters using frozen mud and hope. And already, you sense a pecking order. Some inmates are clearly veterans. They walk faster, look straight ahead, and somehow, despite the cold, carry themselves like they've figured out the game. Historians still argue whether the system was chaotic incompetence or finely tuned psychological warfare. Either way, it works. You already feel smaller. Your arrival is, oddly, a moment of hope for the others. Newcomers sometimes bring smuggled news from outside. Or cigarettes. Or rumors of amnesty. You're fresh currency in a very old economy. And here's a quirky little detail you didn't expect, the first face you see inside the gate is a goat. It's tied up near the kitchen, bleeding miserably, probably destined to be dinner. You might envy it soon. The guards don't yell much. They don't need to. Everyone knows the rules, mostly because they're made up on the spot. What was allowed yesterday gets you 10 days in the hole today. Shrug too loudly, and you might disappear. The gate clangs shut behind you. You flinch at the sound, it feels permanent, like a seal locking into place. This is it now. No trial. No appeal. Just 1,000 little tasks designed to break you in spirit, one shiver at a time. You shuffle toward intake, clothes damp with sweat that's already freezing. You've arrived at the edge of the Soviet machine. You're not a person anymore. You're labor. And the real fun hasn't even started yet. They strip you before you know what's happening. The building you're herded into smells like wet wood, kerosene, and cold flesh. You're ordered to undress, fast. guard waves a baton toward a row of hooks on the wall. You fumble with buttons, trying not to shake too visibly. Gloves off. Shirt off. Trousers next. The floor is icy beneath your feet. One guy next to you hesitates for a second, maybe he's shy. The baton cracks across his shoulder. He doesn't hesitate again. Your old clothes, maybe your only clothes, are shoved into a sack. They'll either be burned, buried, or handed to the next poor soul down the line. You won't be seeing them again. Now you're naked, goosebumped, and standing in a line of equally frozen strangers. A large tank with a hand pump sits in the corner. A guard in a filthy apron walks down the row, spraying each person with something that smells like burnt lemons and carbolic acid. Delousing spray. It gets in your eyes, your mouth, your everything. The man behind you coughs. The man in front doesn't flinch, he's probably been through this before. They hand you your uniform next. Or rather, the pieces of one. You get a cotton tunic in a shade of grayish beige that might once have had a color name. Trousers that don't fit. Wool socks with holes. A coat that smells of mildew and someone else's sweat. The boots are wooden-soled and too tight, but you learn fast that complaining is the one luxury they absolutely don't provide. A canvas hat tops it off. No gloves yet. Those come only if you survive your first week without disciplinary issues. Apparently, frozen fingers build character. And then, your number. Stenciled crudely onto your jacket and written in ink on a dog-eared card you're told never to lose. You're no longer Ivan Petrovich. Or Grigory, or Yuri. You are now 431K. That's how they'll shout at you. That's how you'll line up. That's how you'll vanish if things go wrong. There's a small mirror nailed to the wall. You glance into it, because you're human and can't help yourself. What stares back is something between a soldier and a scarecrow. You look ridiculous. But no one's laughing. Not even you. One of the guards recites the rules, not that you're expected to remember them all. Just remember the important ones: don't talk back, don't fall behind, and don't, under any circumstance, look at the politicals like they're your friends. Politicals are the ones who used to be writers, professors, engineers. Now they're shoveling ice beside murderers and pickpockets. Here's a weird little historical footnote: in some camps, the uniforms weren't even standardized. If supplies were low, and they usually were, you might be wearing stitched-up curtains or salvaged army gear. There's a documented case of a man issued one left boot and two right gloves. The guard shrugged. Work with what you've got. You're assigned to Barracks 7B. It's a long walk past fences, towers, and men with rifles who seem bored enough to shoot something just for the echo. Barracks 7B is a low, timber-framed rectangle with smoke trickling out of a crooked chimney. The door creaks open. Inside, 50 bunks, stacked 3 high, most of them already full. The heat from a central stove barely reaches the corners. You'll be sleeping near the door, lucky you. The frost doesn't care about your luck. Someone grunts at you and gestures to the top bunk. You climb up slowly, careful not to disturb the person below. Your mattress is a sack of straw. No pillow. One blanket. No privacy. And no insulation from the snores, coughs, or quiet weeping around you. Historians still argue whether the purpose of this intake process was efficiency or ritualized humiliation. Most lean toward the latter. It sets the tone. You are not important. You are not special. You are expendable labor in a system that eats souls the way wolves eat rabbits, quietly, and with no apologies. A bell rings somewhere outside. Evening roll call. You barely know which direction to walk, but someone elbows you. Come on, 431K, time to show your new number to the world. Welcome to the Gulag. Hope you like standing in snow. Word count, 1090. Inside the barracks, the smell hits you first. It's an aggressive blend of unwashed bodies, damp straw, boiled cabbage, foot rot, and, let's be honest, a hint of hopelessness. Your nose wrinkles before your brain even catches up. Your bunk is now home. Specifically, the top one on the left, next to the cracked window that never quite closes. The draft will be your closest companion tonight. You climb back up after roll call, limbs already sore from doing what felt like nothing all day. That's part of the genius here, you suffer in motion, and you suffer at rest. Below you, your new bunkmate coughs violently into the shared blanket. You try not to think about it. Or breathe too deeply. The mattress, if you can even call it that, is a loose sack of straw. Over time, lice will make it their Versailles. Every third bunk comes with a rusted hook to hang your coat. There's one bucket in the corner, yes, that kind of bucket. And no, it's not emptied often enough. You'll get used to it. Or at least, you'll become skilled at breathing through your mouth in short, shallow bursts. Lights out comes with no warning, just a shout and the quick snuffing of a single bulb dangling from the rafters. And then, it's quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Just, the absence of orders. You lie there, eyes open in the dark, listening. Someone's whispering a prayer in a language you can't quite place. Someone else is grinding their teeth. And someone far off is muttering over and over, like a broken record. You get the sense that no one here is new, even when they are. Suffering matures you quickly. The barracks aren't heated, not really. There's a stove in the middle, sure, but it runs out of fuel around the same time the guards run out of mercy. You hear a scuffle near the back. Two men fighting over an extra scrap of blanket. No punches, just hissing, snarling. They settle down quickly. Nobody wants attention. And here's a little quirky fact for your trouble, in some camps, prisoners would stuff their socks with pages torn from Soviet newspapers, not to read them, but to keep their toes from freezing. Stalin's speeches made surprisingly effective insulation. Irony is a warm thing when used correctly. You curl up and try to sleep, but the wood creaks, your teeth chatter, and your thoughts are louder than anything else in the room. You're trying to recall the last warm thing you ate. Or where your family might be. Or whether they even know you're here. Historians still argue whether the communal barracks were intentionally designed to break solidarity. You'd think shared suffering would unite people, but in the Gulag, closeness breeds suspicion. That guy next to you could be a thief. Or a snitch. Or worse, someone with nothing left to lose. At some point in the night, someone farts. Loudly. A few snickers ripple through the darkness. For a fleeting moment, it feels almost human in here. Then someone groans, someone else coughs, and the moment is gone. You fall asleep eventually, not because it's comfortable, but because exhaustion doesn't care about conditions. Your dreams are disjointed. In one, you're on a beach. In another, you're back in the train car. Then you're walking endlessly through snow, unable to find your boots. When you wake up, because a rat scampers across your pillow or your bunkmate rolls over and elbows you in the ribs, it takes a moment to remember where you are. Then the cold reminds you. The guards haven't even rung the morning bell yet, but already people are stirring. Some mutter to themselves. One man is softly reciting a poem, Pushkin, maybe. Another is just staring at the ceiling, unmoving. You sit up, bones aching. Muscles stiff. There's frost on your blanket. Inside the building. Somehow that feels like a punchline to a cosmic joke. You look at your hands. They're already cracked. Bleeding at the knuckles. And this was just the night. The day hasn't even started yet. The whistle blows at 5 a.m. sharp, cutting through the frost and whatever thin sleep you manage to scrape together. There's no snooze button in the Gulag, just the knowledge that anyone still horizontal when the guards come through will be greeted with a boot or worse. You sit up. Your joints protest like old hinges. Every muscle feels 2 sizes too small. You slept in your coat, your hat, even your boots, but still, the cold got in. You peel yourself off the straw sack and clamber down the bunk ladder in near darkness. No time to brush your teeth. No place to do it anyway. Down the center of the barracks, prisoners shuffle like ghosts. No one speaks. Or if they do, it's only to curse quietly or mumble a half-joke about not being dead yet. The stove's long gone cold. Someone pokes at it half-heartedly, like it might remember how to burn. You head outside. The wind hits like a slap. Your breath fogs in thick clouds, and the air crackles with cold. Literally. At -40, spit can freeze before it hits the ground. Your eyelashes feel stiff. If you cried now, the tears would turn to beads of ice. But crying takes energy. And water. Neither of which you can spare. Breakfast is served from a slop bucket near the mess hall, if you can call it that. You line up, holding the same tin bowl you'll use for every meal, every day, until it rusts or gets stolen. Today's ration, a ladle of watery gruel. Mostly water. Some oats. Possibly a beet fragment if the cook was feeling artistic. You scoop it into your mouth with a spoon that's more jagged metal than utensil. Still, you don't complain. Complainers go on the list. No one wants to be on the list. There's bread, too, if you're lucky. A hunk about the size of your fist. You break it in half automatically and stuff one piece into your coat. That's not strategy. That's survival. You'll want it later, when your body starts cannibalizing your muscles around hour 10 of chopping wood or shoveling snow. Quirky historical tidbit for your morning: prisoners sometimes traded the hard crusts of bread for sewing needles, bootlaces, or even hand-copied poems. There was a black market for everything, even fragments of memory. As you eat, a guard wanders past, eyeing each man. He's not really looking at you. He's checking for weakness. A limp. A cough. A hesitation. They don't punish the sick for being sick, they punish them for slowing down. You finish your meal and wipe the bowl clean with your thumb. No soap. No water. Just a good, long lick and a sleeve swipe. Then comes the worst part of the morning, waiting. You huddle in the yard with 100 other men, shoulder to shoulder, breath freezing in the air. You're waiting for the work assignment list to be shouted. Some will go to the quarry. Others to the forest. A few poor souls might get sent to dig latrine trenches, a punishment worse than the punishment cells, depending on the wind. You shuffle your feet, not to stay warm but to stay alive. If you stop moving, even for a moment, the cold gets in. And once it gets in, it doesn't leave. Historians still argue whether this brutal morning routine was about discipline or dehumanization. Either way, it works. By the time your name, number, is called, you're already more animal than man. A man near you collapses, eyes rolled back, mouth foaming slightly. No one moves to help him. Not because they don't care, though some don't, but because there's no point. The guards will notice. Or not. Either way, one less mouth to feed. You're assigned to a logging crew. Not the worst duty, but far from the best. You'll spend the next 12 hours swinging a dull axe at frozen trees, hoping your hands don't go numb before your shift ends. If they do, you could lose a finger. Or two. Not that anyone will bandage it properly. You fall into step with the others as the gate opens and the first march of the day begins. No talking. No dawdling. Just a line of men in ill-fitting coats, stomping through knee-deep snow as the sun pretends to rise somewhere behind the clouds. And so begins another day in the Gulag. You're already counting the hours until you can lie down again, in a frozen bunk, next to a coughing stranger, with one thin blanket and dreams full of teeth. You don't walk to the morning lineup. You shuffle. Boots crunch the snow like tired metronomes, and no one says a word. The air's so cold your breath feels solid, it floats up in fat plumes and hangs there like your soul trying to escape. You reach the open yard where the daily ritual begins. This is Proverka, roll call. Every morning, every evening. 2 chances a day to lose your mind. The guards bark commands like a script. You know the rhythm by now: line up, stand still, eyes forward. They do a head count, then another. The second count never matches the first. It never matches anyone's count. This leads to more counting. Then a third pass. Then a fourth. The wind never cares. You're number 431K, remember. You'd better not forget. If they call your number and you're not fast enough, or worse, if someone else answers for you, well, best not to find out what happens then. You stamp your feet gently to keep circulation going, but not so much the guards notice. Movement means you're trying to cheat the cold. That offends them somehow. This is the part where you start to question time. The sun barely rises, hovering like a sad orange memory behind a curtain of gray. 10 minutes can stretch into eternity when you're standing still at -40, your socks frozen to your ankles. There's an argument a few rows over. 2 prisoners are whispering too loud. A guard stomps over, pulls one of them out, and strikes him across the back with a wooden baton. Not too hard, just enough to make a sound. That sound isn't for him. It's for you. Quirky fact: in some camps, prisoners learn to count the guards during roll call instead of counting each other. Guards rotated, but patterns emerged. Spotting a nicer one sometimes meant your day would be slightly less brutal. Slightly. Roll call finishes, eventually. You're already tired, and you haven't lifted a single tool yet. Someone near you mutters under their breath about how they used to be an accountant. Another guy says he taught music. Nobody responds. It's like talking to the snow. Then it's inspection time. The guards glance over you like bored school principals doing a locker check. They're looking for mismatched boots, signs of frostbite, maybe a stashed contraband potato. Some days, they find nothing and punish you anyway. It's a game of chance you always lose. Historians still argue whether this obsessive orderliness was a Soviet fetish for bureaucracy or just a sadistic time killer. Either way, you'll spend more of your life standing motionless than sleeping. Or sitting. Or living. Today, there's a delay. A prisoner is missing. Not absent, not escaped, just missing. Could be a miscount. Could be someone who froze to death in the latrine and hasn't been discovered yet. Could be a paperwork error. Could be someone with a clever plan and strong legs who's halfway to Mongolia right now. But probably not. Until he's found, or until someone confesses, you're all staying in the yard. The guards circle like vultures in fur hats. You feel your toes go from cold to numb. That's bad. Numb means the nerves are quitting. And nerves quitting means tissue death. Eventually, a guard emerges holding a man by the collar. He was asleep under a bench in the kitchen. Not even escaping, just hiding, maybe hoping today wouldn't happen. They beat him, of course. Not fatally. Not yet. Then the work assignments begin, shouted from a list that sounds like it was printed in a blender. You're assigned to the forest team again. A sigh escapes you, but only in your mind. Out loud, you nod, grip your axe, and prepare to leave the yard. But before you do, you glance down at your boots. Left foot's leaking. Again. You shrug. You'll walk anyway. Because the only thing worse than lining up in this place, is not being in the line at all. The march begins with silence and snow. Always snow. It drifts past your eyes in slow, deliberate flakes, like it's trying to make a point. Maybe it is. Maybe the snow is in on it. You trudge in line with the others, boots crunching in rhythm. It's not a fast walk. More of a steady, bone-weary shuffle. The kind of pace that keeps your blood moving just enough to stop your toes from turning black. Probably. You're headed to the worksite. Today it's the forest. Trees as far as the eye can see, all waiting to be chopped down by people who barely have the strength to lift an axe. Some camps sent men to quarries. Others to dig canals or build roads through mosquito-infested swamps. But here, in this slice of Siberia, the forest is your prison within the prison. The guards flank you with rifles. Some walk. Some ride on sleds pulled by half-dead horses. Their breath clouds the air just like yours, but they're warm under real wool coats and thick mittens. They sip tea from metal flasks. You try not to look. It's quiet, aside from the occasional shout to close ranks. Talking is discouraged on the march. Laughing is forbidden. Not that anyone feels particularly jolly. You pass a row of blackened stumps from last week's labor. Some are still smoking faintly, leftovers from when they tried to burn the roots free. A fellow prisoner in front of you stumbles and nearly falls. No one reaches out to help him. Helping gets noticed. Noticed gets punished. When you finally arrive, there's no rest. The tools are dumped into the snow. Dull axes. Bent saws. A few rusty wedges. You pick one without complaint. It's heavier than it looks, and colder than regret. Start, the guard says. That's it. No speech. No training. Just that one syllable. You swing your axe at the nearest trunk. The blade thuds against frozen wood and bounces back like it's offended. The tree doesn't move. Of course it doesn't. It's January in Siberia. The tree is basically granite right now. It takes 5 swings before you chip off anything more than bark. 10 swings before you realize you're sweating under your coat. That sweat will turn to ice the moment you stop moving, so you don't stop. The man next to you starts singing softly in a cracked baritone. An old folk song, something about a fire and a warm meal. He's warned once. He doesn't stop. A guard steps over, says nothing, and hits him across the mouth with the butt of his rifle. The singing stops. Historians still argue whether the guards were under orders to break morale slowly, or if they just improvised. Either way, it works. The cold, the silence, the endless repetition, it all seeps into your mind like water into a crack. Eventually, something splits. A quirky tidbit: in some camps, prisoners carve chess pieces from frozen bread. Not to play with, just to remember the rules. Tiny kings and pawns hidden in coats seems like fragments of a world that made sense. By midday, you felled 1 tree. 1. You and 2 others spent 4 hours hacking at it like cavemen. When it finally crashed down, the snow muffled the sound. It felt like nothing. No victory. Just more wood to move. You're given 15 minutes for lunch. No fire. No shelter. Just a hunk of bread and, if you're lucky, a bit of boiled grain. You eat fast, not because it's good, but because food doesn't taste like anything at this temperature. It's just fuel. You don't even chew much anymore. Your jaw's too tired. The guard tells you to keep moving. Your hands scream. Your knees are jelly. Your boots are soaked from snowmelt and your left foot might be bleeding. You swing the axe again anyway. Because what else is there? Eventually, someone collapses. Face down in the snow. You don't know his name. You've seen him every day, but never heard him speak. The guards drag him to the side, poke at him once, then leave him there. If he gets up later, good for him. If not, well. One less body to feed. The sun starts to dip by mid-afternoon, and the cold changes. It's not just cold now, it's angry. Your coat hardens. Your breath crystallizes in your scarf. Your hands stop hurting, which is somehow more terrifying than when they hurt. And still, you swing. You swing until the whistle calls you back. Until your muscles shake. Until your brain forgets how many fingers you have. Until you hear the first whispered joke from someone. At least we're not in two gulags. You don't laugh. But you don't cry either. That's something. You line up for the march back, eyes on the ground, axe slung over your shoulder. Behind you, the trees stand silent and unbothered. Tomorrow, you'll come back and hit them again. By the time you return from the worksite, your limbs feel like wet lumber and your breath wheezes out in bursts you can barely control. The sun is long gone, though sun is a generous term for the pale smear of light you saw earlier. Now it's just blackness and wind. There's no welcome home at the gate. Just a count. Always a count. The guards bark out numbers as you stand in the yard like frostbitten statues. If the tally doesn't match the morning's, you're staying put. Doesn't matter if someone collapsed in the woods or wandered off a cliff. Until the discrepancy's solved, you're all guilty of existing. Tonight, mercifully, the numbers match. Or the guards decide they don't care. You shuffle back to your barracks, muscles trembling, boots soaked, and that familiar stench hitting you like déjà vu inside. It's warmer, by maybe 3 degrees. The stove burns something vaguely flammable. Could be twigs, could be furniture. Who knows? Dinner awaits, if you can call it that. A metal bowl of boiled water with specks of cabbage. You drink it anyway, savoring the illusion of warmth. Sometimes you get a grayish lump that might be meat. Might also be rat. Doesn't matter. You eat it before anyone can ask. Your bunkmate's already up top when you return. He's shaking under the blanket like he's being electrocuted by ghosts. You climb up beside him without a word, because that's what you do. Words are expensive. Warmth is shared. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. Fingers throb. Shoulders burn. You can feel your spine in high definition. You lie flat, letting the pain bloom and settle. You're too tired to shift position, too cold to sleep. Then the scream comes. Not from inside. From outside. Short, sharp, and very real. Everyone hears it, but no one moves. Screams happen. Sometimes they're discipline. Sometimes they're examples. Sometimes they're practice. A few moments later, the door creaks open. A prisoner is dragged in. His face is bloody, his coat ripped. He collapses in the corner. No explanation. He was probably caught resting. The Gulag has rules about rest, don't. Historians still argue whether the guards were sadistic or just numb. Either way, the result is the same. Pain becomes weather, something you live with, comment on, ignore. One of the prisoners, a man with missing fingers and a limp, mumbles something about a story he heard. In one camp, guards made prisoners move a pile of stones from one side of the yard to the other, and then back again. For 6 months. No reason. No goal. Just to see who'd snap. You're not shocked. You're barely awake. A joke starts forming in your mind. Something about how Kafka would have loved it here, but you forget the punchline before it's finished. Your thoughts blur like frost on glass. And then you notice him. A man in the far corner, lying motionless. You think he's sleeping, until someone nudges him and he doesn't stir. The room goes still. No one calls the guard. No one whispers a prayer. He's just done. Gone. You close your eyes. Not out of fear. Not even sadness. Just to give your mind a break from the flickering horror reel it's been watching all day. A quirky little truth, prisoners used to trade lullabies. Not songs, actual whispered lullabies, remembered from childhood. 1 for 1. The deal was simple, give me peace for a minute, and I'll give you mine tomorrow. Even in hell, there were terms of comfort. You think of one now. A song your mother sang once, back when warmth was assumed and food came in plates. You hum it, barely audible, until your bunkmate elbows you. Shut up. You're off key. That might have been a joke. You drift toward sleep. Not because you're safe, but because your body can't hold out any longer. You're a machine shutting down for repairs it will never get. Tomorrow, you'll wake. March. Chop. Shiver. Hope. And if you're lucky, you'll make it back. Breakfast is a ritual you don't look forward to but can't afford to miss. You wake before the whistle this time, not because you're rested, there's no such thing here, but because your stomach is chewing on your spine. Hunger is louder than sleep. Outside, the line is already forming. Prisoners shuffle through the snow with their tin bowls and their hollow eyes. You take your place and wait. The mess hall, if it can be called that, is more like a barn with iron shutters. Inside, steam rises from great bubbling vats that smell faintly of boiled despair. The cook, a man with a beard like a moldy mop and hands covered in grease, slops a grayish liquid into your bowl. Technically, it's soup. More technically, it's boiled water that once flirted with cabbage. You give it a swirl. A wilted leaf floats like a lost sailor. That's the highlight. If you're lucky today, and you seem to be moderately so, you get a pinch of salt. Not handed to you, no, that would be too easy. It's scattered on the table in front of you, like breadcrumbs from a fairy tale that goes nowhere. You swipe at the grains with your thumb, press them to your tongue, and for one strange, beautiful second, flavor. Then it's gone. You sip the soup slowly, savoring the illusion that it's doing something useful for your body. Your breath steams up from the bowl, warming your cheeks for the briefest moment. Then the cold takes back what little it gave. And here comes the star of the show, the bread. You get exactly 300 grams of it, weighed with terrifying precision. If you worked especially hard yesterday, or if your name's on the right side of a guard's favor, you might get an extra scrap. But that almost never happens. The bread is dense, sour, and slightly damp. You chew it slowly. Carefully. Every crumb is a currency. You eat half and tuck the rest into your coat. The lining has a secret fold you made with thread pulled from your own socks. That bread will be lunch. Or dinner. Or, if you're feeling reckless, trade it for a button or a pencil nub. Fun historical fact, prisoners were known to trade bread for stories. Literally. Someone would promise to recite a poem or tell a memory from the outside, and in return, the listener gave up a bite. A sliver of calories for a slice of humanity. Across from you, someone's bowl tips over. The liquid seeps into the frozen ground like it's fleeing. The man stares at it with the expression of someone watching a ship sink. No one offers him theirs. That's not cruelty. That's calculation. Someone else asks in a low voice if you've heard the rumor, some guards got caught skimming flour from the stores, selling it in the nearby village. Now the whole camp's rations are being cut by 10%. You shrug. That's not a surprise. The surprise would be if they weren't stealing. Historians still argue whether the minimal food rations were a calculated method of control or just logistical failure. Some say it was both, starvation as a tool and a byproduct of corruption. Either way, your ribs are counting down to invisibility. After breakfast, there's a brief window, 5, maybe 10 minutes, before the work march begins. Some use the time to smoke if they've got anything to smoke. Others lean against the walls and close their eyes. You walk slowly around the yard, hoping the movement will warm your feet. You pass a man crouched near the fence, scribbling something into the snow with a stick. It looks like math. You don't ask. You just nod. He nods back, like two old colleagues at the world's worst office party. Your stomach gurgles. The soup didn't touch the sides. And that half bread in your coat feels like it's singing to you. You ignore it. Rationing is an art form now. You glance at the sky. It's pale and flat, like someone forgot to finish painting it. No birds. No planes. No sign of a world beyond the wire. Just another day where your biggest decision is whether to chew your crust now or gamble on surviving until sunset. The whistle blows again. You fall into line. Back to the woods. Back to the axe. Back to pretending you're not starving. The trees don't whisper in this part of the forest, they eavesdrop. You walk among them with numb hands and eyes that dart to every shadow, not because of wolves, but because of something far worse, fellow prisoners. By now, you've learned that the worst danger isn't always the cold or the guards or even the food, it's whispers. Not the kind that spread gossip, but the kind that can end your life. Sabotage, snitching, secrets. These are the true currencies of the camp. You're splitting logs with a rusted axe when it happens. The head comes loose mid-swing and flops uselessly into the snow. You stand over it, unsure whether to laugh or run. The guard sees, but says nothing. He makes a note. That's all it takes. By the end of the day, your name could be on the list. The snitch list. Every camp has one. Some are scribbled in pencil. Others are carefully typed, copied, and sent to Moscow. No one knows who writes them, or who's feeding names. But if you're on it, odds are you'll soon be relocated, a word that never means what it should. Later, back at the barracks, you feel the air change. Men speak in lower tones. Some sit too far apart. Others too close. A man you shared bread with last week now won't meet your eye. Paranoia is part of the uniform here. You overhear a quiet argument, someone's tools were found broken at the worksite. Sabotage? Laziness? Or just decay? It doesn't matter. Blame must be assigned. That's the rule. And someone's going to sleep in the punishment pit tonight. You sit near the stove, such as it is, and rub your palms over the fading heat. A man leans beside you and murmurs, "You hear about Lev? Picked up for listening to BBC." You raise an eyebrow. Radios are forbidden. Owning one is practically a death sentence. Turns out it wasn't even true. Just a story. A joke. But now Lev's gone. Just gone. Historians still argue whether the mass culture of informing was mostly driven by fear or by reward. Officially, the state offered better rations, reduced sentences, or special favors for informants. Unofficially, it became a twisted form of survival, get someone else punished before they do it to you. Quirky fact, in some camps, guards would plant fake letters or scraps of contraband just to see who would report it. A loyalty test, like a poisoned apple. Fail it, and you're accused. Pass it, and you're still watched forever. You remember a man once saying, "The snow here has ears." You thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. At dinner, which is the same old soup, thinner now, you overhear a different kind of whisper, escape. Someone's cousin, or maybe a cousin's cousin, once dug under the fence during a snowstorm. Made it to Irkutsk. New name, new life. You don't believe it. But still, the idea hangs in the air like steam from your bowl. Dangerous hope. That night, as you lie on your wooden bunk, you stare at the beams above you. There's a message scratched into the wood, barely visible in the low flicker of the single light bulb. Watch what you say. The walls are paid to listen. You wonder who wrote it. And whether they're still here. You hear footsteps outside, heavy ones. Then silence. Someone is being taken. You don't turn to look. You don't even breathe. The hardest thing isn't the cold, the hunger, or the work. It's not knowing. You sit cross-legged on your bunk, staring at a torn scrap of paper, yellowed at the edges, folded like it was once kept in a coat pocket close to the heart. It's someone else's letter. Left behind. Or forgotten. Or stolen. Doesn't matter. What matters is that it exists at all. You haven't received one. It's been months, maybe a year, maybe longer. Time has the texture of mushy bread here, soft and rotting. You've written home, you think. You remember asking for news from your sister. Or maybe it was your wife. It's hard to recall which letters you imagined and which you actually wrote. Or whether they were ever sent. There's no mailbox in the Gulag. Instead, there's a bureaucrat in a wool coat with a clipboard and a temper. Every letter must be read, reviewed, and redacted. Sometimes entire pages are crossed out in thick black lines. Dangerous sentiments, they call it. One man was punished for describing the weather as oppressive. The implication, they said, was political. You once tried writing a birthday message to your son, just a few lines. You folded it neatly and slipped it to the camp post clerk. He looked at you, looked at the envelope, and said flatly, "Not appropriate." That was it. He didn't even open it. Just tossed it into the stove beside him without blinking. You watched the ash rise like a ghost. Historians still argue whether most Gulag letters were blocked for political reasons or simply lost in logistical chaos. After all, these camps sat in the back corners of nowhere, and mail was more wish than guarantee. Meanwhile, some prisoners became masters of coded writing. Instead of saying, "We're hungry," they'd write, "We're short on joy." Instead of, "The guards beat us," they'd say, "We're being strongly persuaded to behave." Cheeky, clever, desperate, it was the language of survival. And sometimes, you just didn't write at all. What was the point? Some inmates convinced themselves that no one was writing back because everyone had forgotten them. Others believed the opposite, that their families were dead and no one had told them. Quirky fact, in one camp, the warden personally rewrote all incoming letters to make them more encouraging. Inmates would receive notes from family that read like party slogans, "We are proud of your contribution to national progress." It didn't matter if the original letter begged for your release. You watch as the older man in the corner, Victor, maybe, sits hunched over a thin sheet of paper. He's copying a poem from memory. You know it because he mouths the words soundlessly, line by line, like a prayer. Later, he'll try to send it. It won't go anywhere. But writing it makes the world feel less empty. Sometimes, a miracle happens. A real letter arrives. A woman 2 bunks over, you didn't even know she had a daughter, receives a note. Just 3 lines, but they're enough to make her weep quietly into the wool sleeve of her uniform for an hour. You used to try and read letters over people's shoulders. Now you don't bother. Hope is dangerous. Some nights, if you listen carefully, you can hear people whispering stories they've made up about the outside world. Not facts, fantasies. "My husband has a job now," one woman says. "My dog is probably waiting for me," says another. A man who hasn't spoken in weeks suddenly mumbles, "I bet there's still bread in the shops." No one argues. The lies help them sleep. And maybe, you realize, that's what letters really are here, hope with a postage stamp. You lie down that night and mentally draft another one. "Dear Anna. It is still cold. The men are thinner. But I'm still me. I hope you are still you." You never write it down. There's no more paper, anyway. Just frost. You wake up one morning and your fingers don't bend. They look the same, still grimy, still raw around the nails, but there's no strength in them. They stay curled, stiff like tiny sticks of wood, and you have to use your palm to nudge your tin mug across the bunk. The man beside you notices and says nothing. He's seen it before. You've seen it too. Frostbite. Your fingertips might not fall off today, but give it time. So you go to the camp infirmary. A loose term. It's really just a low-slung barack that smells of boiled gauze and hopelessness. The doctor, if you can call him that, is wearing the same uniform you are, only slightly cleaner. His name is Ivan. Or maybe it's Yuri. His stethoscope is broken. His eyeglasses are held together with twine. I can give you aspirin, he says, after squinting at your hand for 2 seconds. Or, vodka. You blink. He smiles faintly. Just kidding. We don't have vodka. He wraps your fingers in strips of something that might have once been white. You're lucky you're not in the advanced stage yet, no black flesh, no smell. Not like that poor fellow who showed up last week with toes like charcoal briquettes. They amputated 3 of them. With a wood saw. Historians still argue whether Gulag medical care was a cynical joke or a sincere attempt hamstrung by neglect and incompetence. Either way, you come here mostly to lie down, not to be cured. There's a woman in the cot next to you, her face flushed, whispering about a childhood dream of dancing in Kiev. Her skin is hot to the touch. Typhus. You edge away without meaning to. The doctor says there's an outbreak, but don't worry, it's only affecting the weak. You don't ask how they're defining that. A younger guard bursts in with a scrawny man draped over his shoulder like laundry. Found this one by the pit, he grunts. The patient is unconscious. One arm hangs at the wrong angle. No one moves. Eventually, the doctor sighs and points to the floorboards. Lay him there. You begin to understand that the infirmary is also a waiting room for death. Quirky fact, in one Siberian camp, they used powdered charcoal from burned logs as wound dressing. Not because it worked, because it was black and looked medical. Sometimes the doctor will try to make things better. A bit of sugar, hidden in a shirt cuff. An old folk remedy. A song. You once heard him hum a lullaby while setting a broken nose. No anesthesia, just a dirty rag to bite. He tells you, very seriously, that if your hands don't improve, they may have to be removed. But not yet, he adds cheerfully. They're still a bit too pretty. That night, you wrap your hands in an extra sock and whisper a promise to your fingers, hold on. You're not ready to say goodbye. The next morning, you find out the woman who dreamed of dancing died in her sleep. They wrap her in a gray blanket and carry her out without a word. No ceremony. No grave. Just a shallow hole behind the barracks, where the snow swallows the shapes of the dead. You return to work with your hands wrapped like clumsy paws. It hurts to grip the shovel. The guard notices. Don't be lazy, he mutters, striking your back with a short stick. You nearly drop to your knees, but don't. Falling is weakness. Weakness is death. Later, in the barracks, a man with a missing eye tells you that the best way to treat frostbite is to soak your hands in your own urine. It's sterile, he says, nodding as if quoting scripture. You don't try it. But you think about it. And this is your new reality. If your fingers die, part of you dies. And the camp doesn't really care which parts are left. But you care. You still have your name, your thoughts, and for now, 10 fingers wrapped in ragged warmth and a little hope. You hear the story before you see the cell. A man in the lumber gang made a joke. Something light, something forgettable, about the guard's boots, or his missing tooth, or the way he always looks like he's smelling cabbage. No one laughed, not loudly, but someone nearby must have reported it. Or maybe the guard just needed to make an example. Now the man is in the box. You walk past the punishment cells on your way to work. They look like oversized crates, wooden cubes sunk into the snow, barely tall enough to stand in, barely long enough to lie down. No windows. Just a small slot at the bottom for sliding in watery soup. Maybe. If someone remembers. No one's quite sure how long they leave you in there. A day. A week? Until your limbs forget how to unbend. If the temperature drops too low, they say the box becomes an ice coffin. No insulation. No mercy. You press your cheek to the scarf wrapped around your face and quicken your step. The guards call them kartzer. Officially, they're disciplinary isolation units. Unofficially, they're places where time stretches and the human mind folds. Inside the box, there's no light. No sound. Just your own breathing, your heartbeat, and the cold, creeping in like a second skin. People whisper that you can hear your thoughts grow louder in there, until they sound like someone else's. Historians still debate whether the use of solitary confinement in the Gulag was mainly a punitive tool or a method of breaking prisoners psychologically before execution or longer-term exile. Some argue the sheer randomness of who ended up in those cells was the point. And not every punishment is solitary. There's the pit too. You see it one day while hauling lumber back toward the camp, a circular hole dug deep into the permafrost, just wide enough for a human body. The prisoner inside is knee-deep in slush. His eyes are wild. There's no ladder. He was probably thrown in for fighting over a crust of bread. Maybe he'll be pulled out tomorrow. Maybe not. Quirky fact, in some camps, prisoners were punished by being told to dig holes and fill them back in all day long, just to break the spirit with pointless effort. You try to stay invisible. You nod at guards but never too eagerly. You do your work, but not too fast, you don't want to be accused of showing off. You speak only when spoken to. It's like living inside an endless logic puzzle where any wrong move could land you in a wooden box of your own. And yet, some people still fight back. You hear about a man who carved a hidden message into a wall plank with the end of a spoon. I was here. I did not bow. The guards found it. He disappeared. No one talks about him anymore. Sometimes, in the barracks at night, someone starts to hum a song, a forbidden one. Maybe an old ballad from their village. The tune rises, soft and slow, curling into the rafters like cigarette smoke. The guards shout, bang the door, demand silence. But the song lingers. And in that moment, it's like no one's afraid. The man who was sent to the punishment cell for that joke. He returns after 6 days. He can't stand straight. His lips are cracked, bleeding. One of his shoes is missing. You offer him a sip of water and he nods, but doesn't speak. Later, you hear him crying into his blanket, not loudly, not desperately, just quiet little sobs like someone trying to remember what it feels like to be warm. You don't ask what it was like in there. You already know. Across the perimeter fence, where the floodlights hum and the guards don't always look, there's another world. The women's camp. You've only caught glimpses, figures in drab dresses walking 2 by 2, a distant sound of laughter carried on the wind, a guard's voice shouting something you can't make out. It's a separate compound, fenced and watched, but close enough that the scent of their cooking sometimes drifts into your side of the camp. You swear you once smelled cinnamon. Probably just mold and cabbage playing tricks on your sleep-deprived brain. The stories swirl like smoke in the barracks. Someone knows someone who passed a note. Someone else swears they kissed a woman behind the infirmary during a work detail. You roll your eyes, those kinds of tales always come from guys missing most of their teeth and twice their pride. But then one day, your work crew is assigned latrine duty near the fence line. A few meters away, another group, female prisoners, are hauling pails of dirty snow. You don't mean to look. But she does. She glances up. Just for a moment. It's not a romantic gaze. Not some movie-worthy frozen-in-time stare. Just a flicker of shared exhaustion. Her cheek is red from the cold, her eyes puffy, but she looks alive in a way that startles you. No words are exchanged. Of course not. There are guards. Watchtowers. And besides, talking could mean punishment. Or worse. Still, that night, your mind replays the glance like a lullaby. The women's camp operates under the same brutal rules. Work quotas. Freezing nights. Punishments for minor infractions. But everything you hear suggests it's somehow even harsher. Women forced to work in textile factories with no gloves. Sanitary supplies rationed or absent entirely. Pregnancies, some consensual, many not, handled with whispers and sudden disappearances. Historians still argue whether relationships across fences were tolerated, ignored, or ruthlessly stamped out. Accounts vary wildly. Some former prisoners speak of letters wrapped in plastic and tossed across no man's land. Others recall severe beatings for a single spoken word. Quirky detail. In some camps, men and women would secretly marry by exchanging small carved tokens, buttons, slivers of soap, scraps of cloth. Tiny ceremonies held in the dark, officiated by fellow inmates pretending to be priests. You once saw a guard slap a prisoner for whistling near the women's fence. "We're not running a romance novel," he barked. But later, you caught that same guard quietly passing a note from a woman's barracks to a male inmate during roll call. Hypocrisy always survives the cold. Then comes the day someone vanishes. Rumor spreads that a woman was caught with a hidden letter, a folded scrap of newspaper inked with handwriting, stuffed into the lining of her jacket. Some say it was love poetry. Others say it was a plea for help. Maybe both. She's just gone. No official announcement. No trial. Just an empty spot in the work line. Some think she was sent deeper into Siberia. Others whisper that the punishment cell took her. You've learned not to ask. The fence between you and the women might be made of wood and wire, but the real wall is fear. Still, at night, in the frozen silence, you think about her. Not her name, you never learned it. Not her voice, you never heard it. But the way she looked up from that bucket, and didn't flinch. And somewhere in the dark, someone starts to hum again. A different song this time. Softer. Sadder. You listen with your eyes closed, letting it carry you beyond the fence, beyond the cold, to someplace, anyplace, else. Just for a few minutes, you remember what warmth felt like. You first hear the word amnesty whispered like a secret prayer during your morning lineup, somewhere between the second frostbite inspection and the part where they scream your name like it's a crime. A guard murmured it to another, too far to hear clearly, but just close enough to spark something you thought had frozen over months ago: hope. You try not to react. You've learned better. A twitch of interest can make you look guilty. Too eager, and you're marked. Still, the word spreads like wildfire in a forest of dry kindling: amnesty. They say Moscow has announced early releases. Maybe it's Khrushchev. Maybe it's just clerical backlog. Or maybe, just maybe, someone with a soul finally looked at the lists and thought, these people shouldn't still be here. A fellow prisoner with a nose for gossip tells you they've seen documents. Real ones. Names. Stamps. Release dates. You don't ask how they got them. You've stopped asking those kinds of questions. For a week, the camp buzzes. Every prisoner becomes an amateur lawyer. Men who used to grunt now discuss politics with a scholarly flair. Everyone remembers that one article in Pravda about rehabilitation. You even hear someone quote a paragraph from the Soviet Constitution, through cracked lips and two missing teeth. And then, one morning, it happens. A group of men, 12 in total, are called to the administrative barrack. You watch them walk, heads high, their threadbare coats suddenly looking ceremonial. The door shuts behind them. Hours pass. When they emerge, one of them is crying. They're free. Well, about to be free. Transport will come in a few days. A train. Paperwork. And maybe, if they're lucky, a coat that isn't mostly made of patches and dreams. You wait. The next morning, the guards call out more names. Then more the day after that. The excitement becomes unbearable. Even your food tastes slightly less like boiled sorrow. People are smiling. Smiling. In a gulag. You start to believe. And then, nothing. Your name doesn't come. Nor does your bunkmates. Or half the camps. The lists stop. A week passes. No new names. You hear a new rumor. The first wave was it. A mistake, maybe. A gesture. A PR stunt for someone in the Central Committee. One guard tells you straight, you were sentenced under Article 58. You're not getting amnesty. Be grateful you're not getting retried. You want to yell. Instead, you nod. Historians still argue whether these amnesties were genuine efforts to correct injustice or just tactical ploys to reduce overcrowding and clean up the books. Some argue they targeted petty criminals and avoided political prisoners like you. Others say the lists were random, designed to look fair while being anything but. Quirky detail. Some prisoners were rearrested at the train station just minutes after release. Resentenced for vagrancy or suspicion of dissent. One man made it all the way home before being reported by a neighbor, for smiling too much. You try not to think about that. Instead, you do what Gulag prisoners do best, you keep going. You get up. You work. You freeze. You eat what passes for food. You survive. But now, something's changed. You've been reminded that the outside world still exists. That paperwork can end you, or maybe, save you. That luck is real, but it rarely shows up twice. Sometimes, you lie awake staring at the ceiling and quietly repeat your own name. Over and over. Just in case someone, somewhere, is reading a list out loud. Your release isn't announced with fanfare. There's no trumpet, no hug, no ceremony. One day, a guard just grunts your name and says, "Get your things." Which is funny, because you haven't had things in years. Just a spoon you've hidden in your boot lining, a shirt that's more whole than fabric, and the skeletal memory of a life before barbed wire. No explanation. No warning. Just that gruff voice and a bit of paperwork signed by someone you've never seen. It feels like a mistake, like any second now, someone will call you back and tell you it was the other guy with your name who got lucky. You wait outside the administrative hut for hours. The sun creeps across the yard like it's trying not to disturb anyone. No one looks at you directly. Prisoners pass by, some with eyes full of envy, others avoiding your face entirely. You've seen this look before, on Ghosts. Finally, a truck rumbles in. The back gate swings open. You're motioned in. A few others join, faces thin, eyes wide, too afraid to smile. You don't say a word. You sit on the wooden bench, gripping the edge like the world might slip from under you. The drive out is surreal. The guard doesn't talk. No one does. You pass through the gates, the actual gates, and for the first time in years, there's no checkpoint on the other side. Just trees. And a wind that doesn't feel like it belongs to anyone. At a town that barely qualifies as such, the truck drops you. No instructions. No food. No money. Just the ragged clothes on your back and an official release slip that says something vague about completion of sentence and rehabilitation status pending. You stand there for a while. Your knees don't know how to stop bracing against cold anymore. A woman in a shawl eyes you warily. You smile. She turns away. There's a small railway station, if you can call it that, a shack and a board with numbers. You wait for hours. A train does come, eventually. You show the slip. The conductor shrugs. Get in, if you want. Inside, people glance your way. Some scoot a little further down the bench. You don't blame them. You probably smell like old potatoes and hopelessness. There's no plan now. No destination that makes sense. Your old village may not even exist anymore. Your parents might be gone. Your name may be erased from every official file that once claimed you were a person, not a number. And yet, you're not dead. You're out. Historians still debate what happened to the majority of released Gulag prisoners. many were swallowed back into rural poverty. Some, branded as enemies of the people, were refused work or shelter. Others simply disappeared, melted into the edges of society like mist in a broken mirror. One quirky truth. Some former prisoners missed the Gulag. Not the cruelty, but the order. The predictability. Out here, the world has no rules. At least back there, you knew the game. But you've survived. And that's something. You run your hand along the train window. A smear of grime follows. Outside, a birch forest scrolls by slowly, the trunks like pale ribs against a gray sky. Your fingers twitch, unsure whether they're cold or just confused about not having a pickaxe in them. The man across from you is eating a piece of sausage. He breaks it in half and, without speaking, holds one half toward you. You blink. Then you take it. The train clacks along its tracks, slow and steady like a heartbeat trying to remember its rhythm. You sit back, finally, and exhale, long and low. Your muscles begin to release their grip on old memories. The tension in your jaw loosens just enough to let your mind wander, back to forests, to fires, to home, whatever that means now. The world outside is quiet. The sky turns darker, the clouds softening into shapes you might have named once, long ago. You watch them float past like thoughts too light to keep. Even your breath feels different now, less like steam from a dying engine and more like mist curling through pine needles. The cold is still there, but it doesn't bite anymore. It just lingers, gently, like the whisper of a memory that isn't quite ready to leave. You close your eyes for a moment, maybe two. You've earned that. And wherever the next station is, you'll get off and walk forward, not fast, but steady. Because that's what you've learned to do. Sleep well, traveler. You made it.